Hi friends, and welcome to the channel. This is a podcast where I enjoy sharing my insights, and today I'm calling it, What Would You Do? And I'm inspired by those little bracelets that some people wear. They were kind of more popular several years ago. WWJD, What Would Jesus Do? There's a book in my library which is entitled, What Would Buddha Do? And I'm not interested in what Jesus would do. I'm not interested in what Buddha would do. I'm interested in what I would do. And there's only one way to find out. And that's to experience reality. So if you want to know what you would do, let's talk about the difference between reality and the world of the hypothetical. Stick around. We could bicker about it for eons, but we would never know what Jesus would do. He was known for being a radical. How do you know what radicals do? They're irrational. They surprise you. If you knew what Jesus was going to do in the way that we think, then you will have turned him to a graven image, something that you can control. And so we have entered into a insidious world called the hypothetical, and that's the way most of us live. We're constantly running scenarios in our head like a football coach. You know how they do those little plays with their players? They've got the X's and the O's and constantly running plays like, okay, what if and what if and what if and what if. And every single strategy is to overcome variation. Surprise. We don't want to be surprised. So the more that we live in the hypothetical, the more our lives become rigid, predictable, and just downright boring. Now, some people run scenarios in their head that run them into the ditch every single time. Or they run themselves into sickness, loneliness, whatever the case may be. That's the hypothetical world. And we seek out advice on how to live. What would you do if you were me? If I were you, I would do X, Y, Z. Well, not even you can't even get into my own body. No one can get into the future, the real future, which is a hypothetical. It's not until you start getting curious about what you would do as it's happening, maybe, that you get into what I would call intimate living. You become curious. What would this person that I am supposed to be? I'm supposed to be an individual, which I do not believe I am. But if I saw myself as an individual, freely roaming and making decisions, split decisions, there's a part of you that has to get curious about what would the character, what would the person do if faced with this and this and this? So we constantly put ourselves in situations that don't exist. Constantly. You name it. What would I do if I had a terminal diagnosis? And then we proceed to tell ourselves what we would do. And then something like that happens, and we do something totally surprising. So what surprises us is that our models of reality and our hypothetical situations don't line up with the way we really behave. That's where suffering comes in. We set up a play, we set up a script, We set up an expectation. We've run the plays. We've taken in all the considerations. And when something happens called, when the moment strikes, we do something that goes against the playbook. And we surprise ourselves. So the surprise is not the illusion. The illusion is living in a hypothetical situation all the time. What if you didn't have the hypotheticals and you just was curious about what the character, you, the persona, the so-called individual, what are you doing? That might be a better way to live. What am I doing? Well, I'm making a video. What's interesting about what I'm doing now is that 5 years ago, if you would have said, you would be making YouTube videos and talking about very deep insight. Hypothetically, I wouldn't have run that playbook in my head. So I'm doing something that surprises my former expectations of myself, which only tells me one thing: I don't know what I would do. And the only way to know what I would do is to be there when I am doing. And to be curious. I'm now curious about what I would do. As circumstances seem to be closing in on me, or as I age, or as new variables come in, I'm paying attention to how I respond to the playful nature of life. I no longer live in the hypothetical. I live in the real world, which is quirky, as Alan Watts reminds us. Weird, unpredictable. Well, in order for those things to be weird, quirky, and unpredictable, I would have already set up a model of predictability in my head. What if I have no hypothetical, no expectation, and just pure awe and wonder? Well, isn't that a naive way to live? I think it's the only way we are living. See, the other way is experimenting with a hypothesis. That's what a scientist does. They set up a maybe, and they do something to prove it. It's a hypothesis. What if we didn't have hypotheses? Hypothetical. And we truly trusted ourselves. That's what you would call freedom. The Buddha, Jesus, any person who is head and shoulders above the rest did not live in the hypothetical. They did not theorize, project, get ahead of, try to outsmart themselves. They allowed what was already in them to do what it was supposed to do as it was supposed to do it, and they trusted that there was nothing wrong with it. They trusted in its perfection. Perfect timing, perfect guidance, perfect expression. That might be what Jesus meant when he said, "Be perfect like my Father in heaven is perfect." What that means is there's nothing wrong because I haven't set up a model for reality. If I don't set up a model for reality, a hypothetical, an expectation, a future scenario, a playbook, whatever the case may be, if my consciousness is not contaminated with a future scenario, then I'm free. I'm free to live as I am to live. A lot of people don't trust that process. I didn't. Just constantly running playbooks. What would I do? What would I do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Oh, what am I going to do? What if this? Blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, the real present and real me living out my life and so-called making decisions are not what you think. You're not making decisions. Because when the moment strikes, you don't know if it's premeditated, involuntary, accidental, meant to be, not. You don't know. Those are things that are affixed to something called the past. It's already over. Immediacy is something totally different. It might be the way a dog lives, just very immediate, very acutely present, but without the intelligence that we have. Why do we have the intelligence to project a so-called future? It's not what you think, though. That projection of the future is a discovery of what's already there. See, there is nothing made that isn't already in existence. That's where desire comes in. Desire is a discovery. A choice is a discovery. And what you would do is what you are doing. What was meant to be is what you are doing now. The feeling of being wrong is a hindsight illusion. You should. I would encourage you to read that book, Wrong, Adventures in the Margin of Error. I can't think of her name, but it's a wonderful book. You don't know if in the moment you are wrong, because when you're doing something, it feels right. I remember one time driving to Tennessee when I thought I was driving to North Carolina. This was before GPS. And it was a snowstorm, and I missed my exit, and I was with two other people, and we were driving to western North Carolina, and we ended up in Tennessee. We had no idea we were on the wrong road. We just kept driving west. And then it said, "Welcome to Tennessee." By the time we were in Tennessee, we didn't recognize that we had been wrong. So to say to yourself, something is wrong, is a hypothetical thing. You don't know it. And even if you label it that way in retrospect, your brain is not large enough to comprehend the wholeness of it, the perfection of it. So what would Jesus do? Who gives a shit? What would Buddha do? Who gives a shit? What would I do? Who gives a shit? What would you do? Who gives a shit? The only way to know is to be with yourself as it's happening and trust that as it's happening is how it is and how it has been forever and how it will be forever. As it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. You accept that truth, that the only way to live is live. And I put it in quotes because it's like, it's a live broadcast. You have to trust. You don't have to script it. You whatever so-called surprise comes in is a result of some kind of expectancy that you set up. Instead of setting up an expectancy of what you think is going to happen, just live expectantly. Instead of anticipating disaster, just live anticipatorily. Live intimately. If you want to know what you would do, live your life and see and work from that perspective of being curious. I wonder how I'm going to live today. I wonder how I'm going to What am I going to do next? I don't know. Until I'm there with myself doing it. Nobody wants to live that intimately, that naively, that live. I encourage you to join me in throwing away your plans, throwing away your playbooks, and getting out of the hypothetical world and into the real one. We're live, on the air, current, intimate, expectant, anticipatory, and delighted, enlightened. What would I do? I have no idea. But I'm excited to find out, and I hope you are too. My name is Ryan Hebert. I hope you enjoyed these insights. Be live. Check out my blog if you have a moment. It's called mymorningmotivator.com. Sign up for daily emails from me, and we'll see you next time.